Yeah, I make YouTube videos, and it's fun. It's a blast. I review Christian movies. Now, I wasn't born doing that. There were other things, and if you can believe it, there were other things that I did. But it is something that feels very natural to me, and I want to tell you about it. So let's see. Let me read a little bit as to what I wanted to tell you about, so I get it all right. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to tell you a lot of things, and then I'm going to end, and I'm going to think like, what? I didn't say that really important thing that I wanted to say, and that would have changed the entire industry. All right, well, I don't just review movies, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life. All right, so I started off, I went to college. I wasn't born in college either, but I figured you don't need to know all the other stuff. Went to college for broadcast production, and there I fell in love with editing. Not just editing film, but I do love editing film. I think at my heart, I'm an editor. Editing radio interviews, which I think is what kind of gives me this perspective, because I'm used to zooming out of something and making sure that, kind of non-linear editing. All right, I'm listening to this interview, they talk about this thing up here, but I cut that out. So when they say, when I said this thing, I know that they didn't say that thing. I need to make sure that it all fits together. So I kind of unintentionally train myself to have this kind of eye for making sure everything makes sense, making sure everything connects together. So I went to college, did broadcast production. After college, I went and worked for a little radio program in Colorado Springs, Colorado, 80995. That's focused on the family. That's their zip code. Their zip code? Yeah, that's their zip code. They have that. So they're a radio show, Dr. James Dobson, and edited a bunch of interviews and Christian content there. It's fun. It was fun doing that, but it was it wasn't fun. I'm sorry. It was interesting. I learned a lot because Focus on the Family they're the best radio show when it comes to their production. They're very, very, very particular. And so I thought I was good at editing interviews, and I would edit something, and then they would listen, and they're like, I can hear an edit here. And I'm like, how did you hear that? That's impossible. So they're very particular, they're very precise, and it kind of was like boot camp for editing when it came to audio. And that was an education for me, but it was a little boring editing. I don't know, all these interviews with people who wrote books and talking about, hey, I wrote this book. And so I moved on to doing freelance work. And at that point, I was getting more interested in video editing. So I moved on to doing freelance work, did a lot of like faith-based stuff, and then other stuff where it's like, hey, our Kickstarter didn't make as much money, but so we can't pay you, but we can put your name in the credits. And I'm like, please don't put my name in the credits. I'd rather not. Just pay me an experience. And that's fine. But that kind of inspired me to start my YouTube channel. Not getting paid inspired me to start my YouTube channel. I was like, well, if I'm going to waste my time on your thing, I can waste my time on my thing. I can make my own thing. And that's when I started making a YouTube channel. Now, reviewing Christian movies, I started doing that pretty soon after I started the YouTube. At first, I was just making like, here's 5 things I like. And who cares? Nobody cares about that, but I was already doing this. I was already talking about Christian movies. I remember as a kid, my dad and I, we love watching movies, and so after watching movies, we would always talk about what's the worldview of that movie? What were they trying to say? Not Christian movies. We didn't watch Christian movies when I was a kid. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute, but we watched all kinds of movies. And I don't know, I think maybe he learned that from James Dobson. It was a thing, where, hey, talk about movies, but I'm glad that happened. Glad we talked about the worldview of what's being said in this movie. We'd have conversations longer than the movie about the movie. And so that was, I remember, so we watched real movies. And I remember one time at a lock-in for youth group, where I'm sitting there and I'm watching The Omega Code. And I was like, what? I don't know if anybody here work on the what is it about this movie that is different? Different, peculiar. You know, we're a peculiar people, and it was cheesy. It was hokey. It was weird, and and I noticed that there was something different about Christian movies compared to other movies. Now that doesn't mean that independent films in general don't have a certain feel and you're doing what you can, but there's just something about it, and so it's just something I love talking about. I love talking about Christian movies. What can we do better? What can we do different? Because there's two things that I love. There's two things that I love very much in this world. One is Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Yes, and I do love Jesus Christ very much, and that's something that slipped there, but my dad embedded in me. And I also love movies very much. And I don't know, part of me growing up and having these conversations, just thinking, why can't those two things that I love, in the vein of a Tom Clancy novel, this is just not that bad. It's all right. It's not clear and present danger or anything, but it's kind of a political thriller. And and then there's another one. There's another Left Behind movie. Uh, but I'm not original, so I know everybody else is super. I'm not the only reviewer out there reviewing Christian movies. Even I'm not the only Christian. I was very inspired by other reviewers. There's a guy named Nostalgia Critic. In fact, that was part of the joke when I started reviewing movies. Was I was like, hey, you know how there's a Christian version of everything? Well, what if I did the Christian version of this Nostalgia Critic reviewer, and I was the Nostalgia Christian? And so my first review was me as the Nostalgia Christian, kind of playing a character, imitating, paying tribute, I guess, to this other review. Liked it. Like I got more views on that than any other video that I had made. So they were like, "Hey Kevin, when's the next one?" And I was like, "I wasn't gonna do a next one. This was just a joke." And so I kind of